So what were you saying about Belle Harbor again when you went with Bobby?
Turn right. You want to turn right on 2nd Avenue here, Dad.
Okay.
Make your next right.
Dry rye toast. Dry rye toast with it. And black decaf coffee.
And can I have the kielbasa dinner?
Seriously, and the way you do it, I did it 1 week. Just the first week, this is about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Went on a diet, I said no more milk. So what you do is you drink the black coffee the first day, it's lousy. The second day, it gets a little better. Fourth day, it's tasting pretty good. By the end of the first week, you never have milk again the rest of your life.
Why do you want to cut milk out?
Because first of all, I'm
it's
allergic.
no good first, she's allergic to it. And second of all, it's no good for you.
Bloats you.
Right. Besides, not only bloats you, but has the lactose, and milk is
Hard to digest for the elderly like me.
As far as I'm concerned, breast milk is good, and after that, you don't need milk.
Were you breastfed or bottle fed, or do you remember?
I don't remember, sweetheart. I really don't. I probably was breastfed because my mother was, warm and loving, and so I was probably breastfed.
Well, I just know that.
Did she have nice breasts?
I guess so. I don't think I made a whole study of it. When I first met Sue, I had a cross-country romance with her. I met her in June, and then I came back in September. Then we started a date, and then I went back to California. I was living in LA. We went back and forth. We did that for about 5, 6, 7 months or something, until March. And then I got a job offer to come to New York to work in Manhattan Industries. 2 years later, thank you very much, I said to her, time is moving fast. I think it's time that if you want a baby, we ought to do it now. She says to me, well, I don't think so. I think our marriage is good. I really don't want it to ruin the marriage. I said, listen, if you have a good marriage, having a baby would be fine. If you have a bad marriage, a baby's not going to save her. And then she got pregnant. We had Romy, and I used to come home at night, and she'd be opening the door, holding the baby, crying. I'd say, Sue, why are you crying? She said, because I'm so happy. It was really wonderful. And that's how we had Romy. I never knew my father's father, my grandfather. The only grandparent I ever knew was my grandmother, my father's grandmother. But her name is Gittel. I guess it's Gertrude in English, Gittel. And I only know her when I was about 5 years old, 6 years old. I don't remember much after that. We lived with her and near her. I can't remember exactly. And I remember living in the Bronx, 170-something street, I think it was. And I remember when I ran in front of a taxi, and the taxi thought they ran over me, and the lady was hysterical. And I ran upstairs and hid because I was afraid. I also remember my grandmother I lit a fire in the crib, and she got angry. I was a wonderful kid.
You lit a fire in the crib?
Yes.
How'd you do that?
I don't remember. I found matches. I think it started a fire. That wasn't wonderful. My grandmother wasn't happy. My father was a very nice man who I loved because he was my father, but not really because I really loved him. He was a very passive person. I always thought he was a failure because he never made a lot of money, which is pretty stupid. A lot of people don't make a lot of money, and they're wonderful people. But he was somebody I thought that was, he was just there. We never had a really wonderful relationship like the relationship you have with your son. So he really wasn't somebody that I really thought was the best. My mother was the greatest. My mother was wonderful. Whatever I am today, I owe to my mother. She gave me a great deal of confidence, love, affection, and I grew up thinking I could do anything. I still do. I think I can do anything. Now, maybe I can't, but at least I think I can do everything. And my father was okay, but he always thought I grew up to be a bum. They always told my mother, your son is going to be nothing, because I was always a jovial kind of kid and I'd love to, you know, I loved life. I mean, I was always doing a lot of things, and they all thought I'd be nothing. And it turned out,
Well, what kind of things were you doing that they thought you'd be nothing?
well, like once we took a boat ride till 5 in the morning in the ocean where we were drifted out to sea, and my mother had to come and pick me up at the police station. The Coast Guard rescued us. That was mine. Or I drive to Florida, and you know, I do a few things. I have a Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, and so, and at school, you know, I was always good at school, but I never studied much, and it was really a problem for everybody else. Who knows? But they always told my mother and my father that your son is going to grow up to be a bum. And my father once said that to me. He was angry at me. He said, you're going to have to grow up to be a bum. And maybe that's what drove me. I know I didn't want to be like my father.
When did he say that to you?
Oh, God, I think I was around 17 years old at the time. 19 years old. And once I came home, had a date with a girl in the Bronx, and I came home at 4 in the morning, and he was standing out in the street looking for me. And boy, did he whack me. But the worst one that whacked me was when I was no more than 5 or 6 years old, no more than Sasha Lukey's age. We went to Coney Island. We lived in Brooklyn at the time, 1716 Avenue T, and 18th Street. And I said to my mom, I want to go home. She said, well, just wait a while. We'll be going home soon. So because I was such a wonderful kid, I said, no, I'm not going to wait. 5 or 6 years old, I walked home from Coney Island to Avenue T, following the railroad tracks. At least I was smart enough to figure out how to get back and follow the railroad tracks. Walked all the way back. They couldn't find me. They had the police, they had the fire engine. My mother was hysterical. She thought I was dead, I was drowned or kidnapped, whatever. And when they came home, my father saw me playing marbles in the street. He came and gave me the biggest beating of my life. He just killed me. And I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Why did your father come to Brooklyn in the first place?
Why did he go? He followed wherever my mother went. That's why he went to Belle Harbor. The reason we got to Belle Harbor is my mother, it was 1944 in the hurricane. The hurricane decimated this house. And it was next to my aunt and uncle's house, Uncle Sam and Aunt Mandy. And so my Uncle Sam said to my mother, Rose, why don't you come to Belle Harbor? And so she thought it would be a good idea. Now the house had no roof. It had 6 feet of water in the basement. It was devastating. But we could buy it cheaply, so she borrowed $500 from my Uncle Abe, put $500 down, and bought the house for $10,000. And my father, he refused to move. He was not going to move from Brooklyn. And finally he came. And then Lorraine was already married. And Maxine was there shortly because she got married right after that. So and that's where I grew up. I was about close to 9 years old, I think, when we moved. I remember taking buckets of water out of the basement. And every summer, we lived in the basement. We rented out the 2 floors. And my mother did it all, and she was smart enough to figure out how to pay for the whole mortgage by just renting out the 2 apartments. And we had enough money to fix up the house and pay off the mortgage. And we did it every summer. But, you know, I knew I was poor, but it didn't matter. I was young, and it didn't matter because I played ball, and that was the only thing that was important.
How'd you know you were poor?
Well, because everybody else was rich. They didn't live in the basement. They had cars. They went to restaurants. I didn't go to a restaurant until I was 17 years old. And the only reason I went there is that the Mandelbaums, Billy Mandelbaum's parents, invited me to go to Westridge's. That was the name of the restaurant on Beach 116th Street. It was the first time I was ever in a restaurant.
What'd you think? Do you remember?
No. I just knew it was pretty clear. Listen, I grew up hating steak. My mother, bless her, was the greatest woman in the world, the worst cook. She would put a steak in that infrared baking thing that we had. It was a white infrared machine that we kept on top of the table. She put the steak in on one side and probably 3 days later turned it over to the other side. And I grew up hating steak. She couldn't understand it. And I kept saying she was buying bad meat. And she would say, I'm buying the best meat. I'd say, Mom, it's terrible. I grew up hating. And then one day, I was 14 years old. This is a true story. We went to Billy's house, and it was Sunday afternoon. He said, would you like to stay for a barbecue? I said, sure. Not knowing what we were going to have. And then I asked, and I said, what are we going to have? And he said, steak. And I said, oh my God, I hate steak, but I'll just stay anyway. And he put a piece of meat about that thick, juicy, red, right in front of me. I said, what the hell is this? I never saw anything like that. So it was steak. And I took a bite of that. I knew that something was going wrong at home. So I told my mother, but I wasn't smart enough because I used to say, hey Mom, you got to make it thick, you got to make it medium rare, you got to, it's got to have juices, got to have seasoning. She used to take one piece of meat, flat, put it in there, and just until it was shoe leather. It was like a little nook in the kitchen where we had a table. It was like a breakfast nook.
Right.
And it was a table and benches on both sides, and we'd sit there and that's where we ate. We had a dining room, but we only ate in the dining room like for Pesach or when my aunts and uncles or everybody came over. Otherwise, we ate in the breakfast nook. One night we're having dinner. I think it was my dad and my mom and I can't remember who else. I think it was just the three of us. And I don't remember, but I know that we had salad. And my mother kept saying, Zach, have some salad. I said, Mom, I don't want any salad. Zach, have some salad. Mom, I don't want it. This went on, I'm not kidding, maybe 25 times. I kept saying, Mom, please leave me alone. I don't want any salad. She kept saying to me, I want you to have a little salad. It's good for you. Blah, 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 blah. Finally, I went so crazy. I picked up some, threw it at her, and said, here, have your salad. I was so upset, which was a terrible thing to do. I remember my bar mitzvah. The bar mitzvah kids, my bar mitzvah was a little different than Michael's and Andrew's, or your bar mitzvah. My bar mitzvah was, we went to shul, and we came back to our house. We had corned beef and pastrami sandwiches, and that was it. When I became an assistant buyer at A&S, I was a very big shot. At that time, they promoted me, so I got $5 raise. I was up to $80 a week. And I spoke to my dad and said, I want to take you to lunch. And so he worked at the 500 7th Avenue building on 37th and 7th Avenue. And so I went, and I took him to lunch somewhere. And, he was a union worker, so he had only a certain amount of time to go out and a certain amount of time to come back. But I felt like such a big shot. I picked up the tab, we had lunch, and that's probably the only time I've ever been with my dad. I never went to see him work, but once a year he used to bring back suits, ladies' suits, one for my mother and one for my sister, Maxine. And they got clothes because I guess part of the perk that he got is working at this place. It was called Molly Parnes, which is a very fine ladies' apparel company.
Molly Parnes?
Molly Parnes. Was that he was able to make a couple of, he could buy the fabric and then over a period of a year make 2 suits, and he did. He made 2 suits for my mother and my sister, Maxine. But they didn't make any men's suits. My father was born in 1890. He came here when he was 12 years old, and he worked as an apprentice cutter, I guess, for a while. He used to work 6.5 days a week and get paid nothing, and that's why he was very pro-union. And when I was growing up, I was pro-union. I'm not anymore, that's for sure, ever since I got into management. But He was pro-union because they paid him a living wage, and he was able to work 5 days a week. And if he worked a Saturday, he got time and a half. He worked Sunday, got double time. And he used to tell me that for a nickel, you could go into a restaurant like Jack Dempsey's. For 1 nickel, you would buy a glass of beer, and lunch was free. So he could eat, as much as he wanted, as long as he paid a nickel. In those days, he told me steak was something like 12 cents a pound, or 8 cents a pound.
What did his father do?
I don't know. I'm named after him, actually. Harriet, but I don't know what he did. I really don't know. I know that my mother's parents' family, were in the millinery business. Some kind of millinery business. I asked my mother why she married my father, and she thought he was very good looking, and when he came home from the First World War, he was very handsome in his army uniform, and she fell in love with him and married him. They got married. My mother, when she was young, I have some pictures when she was young, was very pretty.
You think she was happy with Nathan?
On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 3. I don't think they had a great relationship.
Why? What makes you think that?
Because my father was a pretty dull guy, and my mother was very, full of life. And I don't think they had a great relationship. They didn't seem to be very happy. It was very matter-of-fact kind of life. He would go to work, come home, bring home the money, and she would take care of the kids. It was very functional.
Did you ever used to do things together as a family?
No, the only thing we ever did was on the weekends. Either we'd go to my aunt's and uncle's house, or they would come to our house. That was the only thing we hardly ever went to movies. The only reason I went to movies, I went with my friends. We used to go Saturday morning for a quarter, I think it was. You get a matinee, the Jack Armstrong or something like that. That was the only way. We never went to movies together. We never went to theater. We never went anywhere. And occasionally, when I was older, like 20 or so, we might go to a restaurant, Chinese restaurant in Brooklyn or something. But the best story concerned your mother and I. This is a classic, and you should know this. We have a problem with a light switch in the dining room. And my mother and father were there. I don't remember everything except my father was there, for sure. And Sue says, Eve says, you need to fix the light switch. I said, I don't know how to do that. She says, it's easy. Just unscrew the thing. I'll go down and turn off the electricity and connect that wire and screw it in. I said, okay. So she said, here's a screwdriver, and I said, okay, so I start to do that. And as I do it, the screwdriver touches some wire, whatever it is, and my hair started to curl like crazy, and I'm shocked by the electricity. It goes through me. I thought I was going to die. The screwdriver goes flying out across the dining room into the kitchen and misses my father's ear by about that much. I mean, it could have gone right into his head. And I said, what the hell happened here? What's going on? And your mother said, oh, right, I forgot to turn off the electricity. Then I should have known. Just then I should have known. This is Floyd Bennett Field. I remember this so well. I used to walk across the bridge, ride across the bridge, on a bicycle, ride across the bridge in a car. There used to be a place near here where we used to park and make out. That was fun. It's like an old
Who was the first girl that you dated, Dad, that you remember?
Probably the first one who became my real girlfriend was Marlene Finkel, who's now married to Jerry Solomon, and they're friends of ours. In fact, they're coming for dinner in a couple of weeks. In the 7th grade. This is Jamaica Bay. Now, do you remember, out here is Breezy Point. We're going to come this way, Reese Park, and then we're going to go to Neponset and then Belle Harbor. And I'll show you where everybody lived. I'll show you where I went to school. I got a job with the Parks Department. And they put me in one of these fields here to collect money. So I used to work 3 days a week, 16 hours a day, something like that. And now I'm on, and I work today, and I give them all the money, and it was about $87. And they started talking to each other, and finally one of them said, "We can't let him do this anymore." So he called me in and said, "You can't work here anymore." I said, "Why not?" "Well, you just can't, but we're going to put you as a chauffeur." I became a chauffeur on the trucks that took all the... I'm going to go to the boulevard. I think the boulevard's this way. Yeah. I'm going to be a chauffeur, which takes all the people to the lots, off the lots, moves around some of the supervisors, and drives. So I became a driver, which was a great job. The reason they took me off is nobody ever told me. I gave them the money that we took in. These guys used to take probably half that money for themselves. And the rest they gave to the city. The beach is over here, which I still think it's one of the most beautiful beaches I've ever been in. And look how nice it is. This is Neponset. Let me show you Billy Mandelbaum's house.
Yeah. You can tell by the signs.
Sorry. Now I'm going to show you Billy's house. This is their house right on the beach. Hold on, I'm going to move this up. See this house? Look at this. It's half a block. It's one half a block. So this is 145th. That's 144th. There are two houses. There used to be a state senator that lived there. And Billy, the Mandelbaum, oh look at this.
That's the lady who lives there.
Yeah, I know. She must be wondering what to do. This is the Mandelbaum house. We used to sit out on the lawn, barbecue in the back, and we walk right here. Here's the beach. Look how gorgeous this beach is. This is the most beautiful beach. I used to come here, swim here as a kid. And that's all we did was come. We'd have parties on the beach. We'd swim on the beach. It was so beautiful. I loved the ocean. It was beautiful.
Who taught you how to swim?
Oh, I probably learned in one of those city pools. As a kid, I went to the pools with Maxine. She used to take me in Lorraine every once in a while. And then I think my father did once or twice. And that's how I learned how to swim. But I really learned how to swim here in Belle Harbor. Because we used to go swimming from late May till September. I just love it here.
Yeah.
God, it brings back such good memories. All the barbecues, the dances we used to have, the parties. We used to listen to Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra dance in here. And Billy actually taught me how to dance.
Which kinds of dances did you do?
Mostly...
Lindy or...
No, we did. Cha-cha-cha, rumba, not the tango, samba.
Salsa?
Samba. No, we didn't have salsa in those days. It was just samba, rumba, cha-cha-cha, and the lindy and the two-step.
Hey, Pops, keep that beat a beating. I feel a rhythmic brainstorm coming on.
Show you the Wolovnik house now. It doesn't mean anything to you, but it had big meanings for me. It has heated underneath the sidewalk. When it used to snow, I used to go around making money shoveling snow, and this place was always, all the snow was gone because it had heat underneath the sidewalk. Okay, now this is Earl's house. This is where I used to hang out all the time. We used to go sit in his room, and we closed the door, and we would blast classical music.
What was that all about?
Well, because I took music 101, music appreciation at Brooklyn College, and I started listening. And I remember they played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, and it was like Full Moon and Empty Arms, you know, that theme. And they played the popular version, then the class, and I said, oh, there's something going on here. So I got very involved. In fact, I took a Beethoven course and everything. And I really got into classical music. I started to love it. And Earl liked it too. We used to go to Carnegie Hall and sit upstairs and do that. And he and I used to go to sit in his house, and he had the records, and we'd blast and listen to the... It was wonderful.
You like classical music too?
Yeah. We used to play ball on 130. I'll show you the school. And I used to play... That's where I really grew up, in the schoolyard. I played baseball, basketball, softball and basketball all day and until it was dark. When it was dark, that's when we went home. And my mother was always yelling at me because I was always late. But that was where we lived. That's how we grew up here. PS 114 is right here. I'll show you that. That's where Bobby and I and all of us, we all grew up here and went to school here.
How did your parents feel about coming and living, being the poor family in a rich neighborhood?
I don't think we ever discussed that. My mother was fine. She was able to maneuver, rent the place, fix it up, do whatever. So we always had money to cover the mortgages and the rent and everything else. And I lived in the basement in the summers. But it really didn't matter. I was out every day on the beach. We swam a lot in the ocean. We'd have parties late at night. It was a wonderful place growing up. And in like 40 minutes by subway, we were right in the middle of Manhattan. So it was a great place to grow up.
How'd you get Sigmund on your birth certificate?
That was because that was my original name that my mother named me. And I never knew that. And then somebody came in and said, "What do you name him Sigmund for? Why don't you call him Zachary after Zachary?" She said, "Okay." But of course she never did it legally. And I found out when I was 18 years old graduating high school, they showed a picture that said Sigmund Solomon. I said, "Who the hell is that?" And I had to go down. Oh, was I pissed. My mother says, "Well, the nurse, she didn't listen." It was that kind of thing. Earl and all of them, and they always had money. And I used to get $1 a week allowance. And what we would do is I would call a girl on Monday and say, "Would you like to go out on Saturday night?" "Yep." So I'd call it Friday to confirm.
Now, come on, they didn't always say yep, did they?
Well, most of them. And this was really very important. I played a lot of bridge and I was taught how to play bridge, and I played gin. And I was a good card player. Every week, if I won money, I'd call the girl on Friday night and say, "Okay, we're going out dancing and dinner and everything." We'd go to Ben Massik's. We'd go out to the South Shore Terrace. These guys had cars. I didn't have cars. They all had cars. You could drive in Nassau at 15 years old. And we would go out to dinner. I mean, a whole night was like $20 on a Saturday night for dinner and dancing and everything. That was a lot of money. I was getting $1 a week allowance, but I won in cards. And if I had enough money, I would take it to a movie. And if I didn't have enough money, I'd have to cancel the date and postpone it, make up some story. Here's where I actually lived. See this schoolyard?
Wait, we're gonna pull. Let's pull and get out.
Okay, hang on. I'll pull off. And this is it. We never had that. This was all open. We had no fence there. This was it. And if you hit it on the roof, they sort of rebuilt the school a little bit. But if you hit it on the roof, from here, the home plate was over here. And if you hit it on the roof, you had to climb the roof, climb up and get it on the, whoever hit it on the roof had to get it. And it was about as high as where those pipes end. Like the first level there. That's about the height. They rebuilt it and added to it. But this is where we played. We played ball here all the time. There used to be a basketball, it still is, but there used to be a basket here. And it was over here. And we would play all day and all night. And it was really, this was where I lived. But God almighty. We're talking about 58 years ago, 60 years ago. No, not 60, 55, 58 years ago. Can you imagine that?
What did you like playing best? Which sport?
Basketball. Basketball was everything. We used to come here all the time. I'm telling you, till it was dark. Till you couldn't see anymore, then we would go home. Yes, it hit from here and go out like this. See? Right in. Like patented jump shot. I played freshman basketball for Arkley High School.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't good enough to play varsity.
Right.
But I played freshman.
Right.
And I learned it all playing here. We didn't play much football. It was mostly basketball and softball.
But isn't that how you hurt your knee playing football?
No, yeah. I hurt my knee in Pomona, California, when a guy clipped me. That's how I broke my knee. We're going to pass Regina Frankel's house. I loved her. We had such a nice romance.
Tell us about it.
She lived over here. I loved her. I thought she was great. She lived here. Now, this is, look what happened. See this house? This is Morty Lembeck's house. Morty grew up here. And this whole house, you see this house? It's totally new. It was his land. Morty had this land. It was open. It was always open. And we used to go in the house. I remember his mother used to cut his food. And she'd say, Morton, come on. We used to play in the street, stickball in the street here. And Regina Frankel lived right in that house over there. See the one with the skeleton and the flag?
Yeah.
It's Regina Frankel's
Pull
house.
over a second.
I want you to take a picture of Morty's house. This was very meaningful to me.
Why?
Because we played here, we played cards almost every day after basketball or before basketball or whatever, or it rained. We used to play in the basement. Go to his basement, and that's where his father taught me how to play bridge. And we used to play Jim Rummy. Eddie, myself, Paul, Pinky, Morty, Larry played once in a while. Morty didn't play much. We used to play down here all the time. Guess whose house this was?
I give up.
Paul Golden's house. He had freckles and sort of reddish hair, and we called him Pinky. This was the house. This house. It's Paul Golden's house. 418, I guess.
And who was Paul to you?
Paul was my closest friend. Well, not my close, but one of the closest friend I had all my life until we broke up.
Why'd you break up?
Oh, that's a long story.
Yeah, I don't have that much battery.
We're now coming up to 252 Beach, 131st Street, which is where I grew up. See this house? This is it.
That was your house?
This is my house right here.
It looks so big.
This little house. 252
Wow.
Beach on 31st Street. We used to have chairs in the front. And I remember we had a VE day or VJ day where the whole block had a black party. And my mother got so drunk that for 1 week she sat out on these chairs, these green chairs, sucking lemons for a whole week because I never drank. That's her. This was my Aunt Mandy's and Uncle Sam's house right here.
Why did she suck lemons?
Because she was trying to get back to normal.
Sucking lemons?
Oh.
Never heard of that. Is that
Yeah.
some remedy?
I guess so. This was my room right here. That's my room. My room is no bigger than like from here to here. That's how big that room is.
And what did it look like on the inside?
It had a bed, a little bed, single bed, a little chest of drawers, and a closet. That was it.
What'd you have on your walls? Do you remember what kind of stuff? you
Oh,
used to-
well, I used to have some sports stuff. I can't remember, but it was probably the Dodgers and stuff, which I loved. See, they got an air conditioner now that's new. We never had an air conditioner. I was at Uncle Sam's and Aunt Mandy's house. This one.
Did they always live next door to you?
That's how they knew about this house, and that's how they told my mother about this house. I always lived next door.
Did you like Aunt Mandy?
No.
Uh-huh.
She wasn't very nice to my mother. The kitchen nook, where we sat right in here and had dinner all the time. This is the kitchen. This is the stairway. Goes up and goes down. Down to the basement, up to the kitchen.
Is that the same stained glass up there?
I don't remember. What is this room? I don't remember. I know that room is the parlor. Oh, I know what this is. This is the way upstairs. The stairway upstairs. This is the door coming in. Then the parlor was here, and then the living room and dining room. And this is it, Mike. This is it. My house, where I grew up. I love this place. It was wonderful. It was so nice.
What's the first thing that can you remember the day that you moved into the house?
No, but I remember the couple of days after sweeping out all the water from the basement. You know, by buckets, taking them out. It was after the hurricane of 1944. Now upstairs, I remember upstairs when Cookie Lavagetto got the hit and beat Bill Bevins. I was upstairs on the porch, right on the top. I remember 1947. And screaming, I was so excited. They beat Bill Bevins. He had a one-hitter, I think. It was a no-hitter, and he broke it up. And I won, I think, 2-1. Scored Eddie Stanky, I believe.
I remember the chairs that used to be out here. They were big and they were green. There were those green metal chairs.
Right.
And they had those big folding, not folding, those like leaves, like backs, the big, you know,
Right.
like leaf back. And what I remember, my first memory of this house
Right.
is when,
Is that fun coming back here?
and it's great, is when I was sitting out there and I had a little girlfriend and she lived, I'm not sure if it was here or not, one of these houses down here.
Yeah.
And your mother sat me down with my little girlfriend and covered us up with blankets. And I always talk about that because it was, I remember that it was the first time that I ever remember feeling how nice it is to be warm when it's cold out.
Cold out. Sweet.
And these bushes were grown higher, right?
We had much bigger bushes.
It was like more. It was a little more private,
I
kind of.
think there were hedges here. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, more like that. Maybe not as high, but
Right.
half the size of those hedges.
Yeah, right. Pinky and I used to sit on the corner of Newport Avenue, right there. On the other side of the street, there used to be, it still is, that white thing. We'd sit on there all night talking about our lives. What am I going to do when we get out of school? He was going to be an engineer. He went to RPI.
What's RPI?
Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. Right on that ledge. There used to be a bus stop. And we talk about our lives. We talk about what we were going to do, what was good, what was bad, any girlfriends, anything. I never thought I was, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was worried about college. I was worried about my life after college. I had no idea what I was going to do. And we sat here all night.
Well, what did you think you might want to be?
I had no idea, Mike. I wanted to be fly jets off aircraft carriers. I wanted to be a Navy jet pilot. But I couldn't because I had torn my ligaments in my knee and got a 4F from the Army, so they wouldn't take me into the Navy. I was in the, what is that reserve thing that they have?
ROTC?
ROTC.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I was in the Air Force ROTC that they had at Brooklyn College. That's what I wanted to do.
What did your mom want you to become?
I don't think she had any plans. Oh, she wanted me to become a doctor. And I took chemistry and as a freshman, and that ended my thing about becoming a doctor. Whereas Andrew at least could do organic chemistry, I couldn't do regular chemistry. So that ended my career. Then she said, well, all right, if you can't be a doctor, you're not smart enough, maybe you can be a dentist. So maybe I'd be a dentist. But I really didn't want to do any of it. And the only reason I ever went into merchandising was I went to Hawaii living with Maxine and Eddie, and every day I'd go into the factory that he had in jeans and a t-shirt, and I felt like every night I was tarred and feathered. I'd work in the factory and I'd go home with all that K-Pop all over me. It was awful. And one day I went into the office and Eddie was there with this guy. He was dressed in a suit and a shirt and a white tie and everything. I mean, a white shirt and a tie. And he introduced me to Bob Barton, his name was, and I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a buyer for Sears Roebuck. And that decided me I was going to become a buyer. Left Hawaii, came back, and got on A&S training program, and the rest was history.
Well, what about him made you want to...
He was dressed in a suit and a tie, and he looked clean. I was in jeans and a t-shirt, and I was tarred and feathered every day. So, to me, that sounded like a good way to make a living. I knew nothing about it. My mother thought that I could really do well if I went to live with Maxine and Eddie, because he was an accountant. And maybe I could become an accountant one day. And if I went there, he would help me with school and everything. And I actually got great grades. I got A's in Pomona High. But she missed me, and so I came back after a year. Maxie and I really became close when my mother died. When she came in and we spent a week together in Florida, the week before she died. And we became very close, and we've been close ever since. Your grandmother was a fabulous woman.
Why?
She was just great. She was smart. She worked hard. She devoted a life to her children. She was the most influential, most important person in my life.
Now, do you think that she was influential because she was so loving to you, or was she influential because she actually helped to sort of steer you in different directions?
She insisted that I go to college. Both Maxine and Lorraine really never went to college. I think them each went for about a year or half a year. She wanted to be sure that I was going to school. She wanted to be sure that I grew up in a good neighborhood, like Belle Harbor, so that I'd be, have good schools and good friends and stuff like that. She was always giving me great support, emotional support, that I was, gave me a lot of confidence. She was wonderful. She was just great, and very warm and loving, and terrific. And I think she made up a lot that my father was not. I didn't understand it all, but I knew that I really loved my mother much more than I did my father.
Did you and your dad get along?
Yeah, we did a lot. We really didn't talk very much about anything. He was never really, he never talked to me about anything. I could never go to him and say, I want some advice, or he didn't know. It wasn't his fault. It's just the way he was.
But your mom, you could talk to?
About anything. About everything. She was great. When I graduated from college, I was 22. And then I went to Hawaii. And then I came back, and then we got married. So, say I was 22 when I moved out.
And where did you go?
We moved to Brooklyn. Our first apartment on Linden Boulevard, between your mother and myself.
And where did you meet my mom?
At Brooklyn College. She was Lenny Chasen's friend. And Lenny introduced me to her, and she picked me up.
What do you mean she picked you up?
She picked me up. She came and wanted to have a date. She liked me, and I liked her. And she was like, talking about somehow, I can't remember exactly, about going out. We went out. I didn't have enough money. I remember telling her I thought she looked a little heavy, so she only had something small to eat, and I was able to have enough money to get a hamburger and a Coke.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Ask your mother. I did that because I didn't have much money. I didn't have enough money for 2 hamburgers and Cokes and French fries or something. So I remember saying something about you looked a little heavy. So she said, then I said, well, what do you want to eat? And she said, I'm not very hungry. So I said, okay. So I had a hamburger and a Coke. It's true. When I told Sue the story and Romy, they both said they would never have gone out with me again.
What do you remember about the night or the time approaching anyway when Lisa was born?
Actually, I was at school, and I think we had a pinochle game the night before, and Stan Handel, I believe, slept over. And when your mother went into labor, I think it was Stanley that took her to the hospital. And I met her at the hospital. I believe that was the story.
What do you remember about when I was born?
I was very happy it was a boy, and that you were well and everything. But the thing I remember more than anything was when you got sick. And Dr. Shirley Minerva Cohn, I will remember her name till the day I go in my grave, who saved your life. That was the most meaningful thing. I remember you were losing fluid, and we were so afraid, and they couldn't get fluid into you. And finally she took a needle and put it into your head and into a vein she found. They couldn't find veins. If you look at your foot, you probably still have scars. And she saved you, and that was the greatest thing. I'll never forget her as long as I live.
How old was I?
2. Not even 2.
Not even 2?
Just about 2.
And what happened? Why did I suddenly...
You got some kind of a cold, a virus, and whatever it was, and it just overtook you, and you couldn't hold any food, and you had diarrhea, and you couldn't hold anything, any water or fluids or food, and we had to rush you to the hospital. It was late at night, and she saved you. God, Michael, you wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. There's no doubt about that. When you and Michael and Andrew were born, I'd go to the hospital, you'd sit in a room, and you would wait, smoke a cigarette in those days. Doctor would come, say, congratulations, Mr. Solomon, you had a boy, a girl. I'd say, how is my wife? And he'd say, fine. How's the child? Fine. Everything's fine. With Romy, it was different because I had to, Sue brought me to this Lamaze class, so I was part of this whole thing. I fell asleep in the Lamaze class. Can you believe that? She was so pissed at me. We were doing some things and you're supposed to, close your eyes and do it. I fell asleep. I mean, Sue was so pissed. Yeah, but it was great because when she went into labor and we went to the hospital, I sat with her and she was in labor a long time, pushing and being there. And then when Romy came out, I was able to held her in my arms less than a minute old, and I cut her umbilical cord. And so it was really like a bonding, immediate bonding right away. So you felt you were part of the whole birthing process, as opposed to where we used to do in those days, where you just went to the hospital and smoked a cigarette and waited. So I think that was a big difference.
Dad, tell me when you cut the umbilical cord, how did it work exactly?
The doctor gave me the scissor, and I cut it, holding it in my arms.
You were holding Romy?
Right?
Yeah? What were you thinking about?
How fabulous it was. And this little thing, and what was amazing is Romy had these long, thin fingers, which now she has big, fat, chubby fingers like me. And she's angry at me too, like I gave her big, fat fingers. Yours are not bad. Romy's is bigger and thicker. And when I remember, she had these long, thin fingers, skinny fingers. She was sweet. And it was really a great feeling cutting the umbilical cord.
When did you decide on her name?
We actually decided on her name about no more than maybe 2 weeks before she was born. I wanted somebody named after my mother, Rose Ruchel, and Sue agreed to do that. But she wanted, in the end, Raina. And I said, I don't want to call her Raina because when they don't like her, they'll call her Cloudy or Snowy or something like that. So I said, that's a crazy name. And I really wanted Rachel. And I wanted Rachel or Rebecca. And she said, Rachel Solomon or Rebecca Solomon is too ethnic. So we went through a list of names maybe 2 weeks before she was born, and we came across Romy, and I said, gee, that's a nice name. She said, I like that name. It was different. And so that's how we got to Romy.
Did you know you were having a girl?
Yeah. Actually, the real story is, if you want to know the story, is that Sue really wanted a girl very badly. Me, it didn't matter. I just wanted a healthy kid. And what happened is that when they did the examination, they found out it was a girl, but Sue didn't want to know. So the doctor wrote down a piece of paper, and she kept it in her wallet for about 3-4 months and wouldn't look at it. Finally, one night, she said, okay, I'm ready to look at it. And she opened it up and said, it said female. And she started to cry because she really wanted a girl very badly. And I remember that. That was very sweet.
And what do you remember about when Andrew was born?
Andrew was born. I had to leave. I was going on a trip. I went to Europe, and the bris was, when they had the bris with Andrew, I was in Europe, I remember. He was always a sweet kid. You didn't talk till you were about 3 years old. I really got very nervous. I was afraid that maybe, Mikey, that there was something wrong with you. Because Lisa, she was full stream at 1 year old. She could do that map of the United States, put it together. We used to show her off. People come to our house and we'd say, okay, Lisa, put these puzzles together. And she did it. She was able to do it. And you couldn't say a word till you were about 3 years old. Really not a word. And we were very nervous about it. At least I was. But Andrew was normal. He was a smart kid. He spoke well. No problem with Andrew. And Mr. Rappaport, he lived right here. When I got accepted to the Macy training program and the A&S training program, I didn't know which one to take. I really wanted to go to the Bloomingdale's, but they turned me down. So when I went to my father, I said, Dad, what training program should I take? He said, I really don't know, but ask Mr. Rappaport. He knows. So I rang the bell. Hello, Mr. Rappaport. I said, I got accepted to 2 training programs, Macy's and A&S. Which one should I take? He said, take the A&S training program. They've been noted to have the best training program, which they did in New York, and that's how I went to A&S. Now, I don't know if my life would have been different if I had gone to Macy's, But that's what happened. So this is where I grew up. It's a great feeling to be back.